Welcome to the January 30th Black Liberation Caucus meeting of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, U.S. section. We will begin the meeting by checking in with everyone who's present. So I'll call on you. I'll begin by saying I'm Teresa Alameen, and I'm based in Columbus, Georgia, with the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. I'm also with the Southern Anti-Racism Network, which is a fiscal sponsor for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. And on the question of Tyre Nichols, the Columbus community is rather slow, so we have not had the demonstration yet, but I understand there's one being planned. So I'll call on Shantae, and hopefully she can tell us what's happening in Atlanta. Shantae, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm driving, so I'm not going to come off camera, but my name is Shantae McLaughlin. I'm an organizer for the Atlanta Metro branch, and I'm also a member with Teresa Alameen and George Friday of the Black Liberation Caucus. Regarding the situation shift, I'm just going to call it that. It's a sad day. It was a sad day. And regarding that, in Atlanta, there are a couple of organizers organizing a few events, Black Push. I know that they're asking for people to kind of stand down and not protest. And I had a show called Unjust that was on our Black Media Network, and that's Facebook, YouTube, and Roku. And because of the situation, I am relaunching it with our street law general soldiers out of Maryland. And we'll probably have Kendrick Johnson's mom, who is the little boy that was rolled up in the mat, as one of our first guests again, just because we can't be silenced about the lack of justice in these different cases, and the police do not get the right.
Oh, well, Sister Shantae, we're trying to do the intros in 30 seconds, and you've kind of gone beyond the Tyre Nichols. So let's stick with Georgia. So we'll do Adrian, who's in Atlanta. Please introduce yourself.
Greetings, everyone. This is Adrian Bernal in English, Spanish, and Adrian Bernal in English. I am with the and a little under the weather today. Got a little bit, but it'll go away. That's all. Glad to be here. What's happening with I don't know what's happening with Tyre Nichols. Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay. Well, Deidre, who's with the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, Deidre has her phone on mute. So, Deidre,
I can't hear you.
Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Deidre Whittlesey. I'm in Columbus, Georgia, and part of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. And I have not heard anything about any demonstrations with the Tyre Nichols situation.
Well, on the question of Georgia, the governor immediately put the National Guard on alert when it was announced that the video would be shown on Friday evening. So Friday morning, he set up the police state to keep people under control. And of course, the governor resides in the governor's mansion in Atlanta, where Shantae and Adrian live. And Deidre and I are about 100 miles south of there. So if we could go all the way to the far north and hear from Donna Peel.
Hello, Donna Peel here, Cape Cod, 90 miles outside of Boston. I'm with the Cape Cod branch and also chair of the Advancing Human Rights Committee's member of the Black Liberation Caucus. And there have been protests in Boston starting right when it was shown and continuing through this weekend. We'll get the news update, but nothing that I've heard of on Cape Cod. Perhaps there's something going on in Hyannis, I would say, but I haven't heard about it yet.
Well, George, Sheila Harper is trying to get in the meeting, and she doesn't have the meeting ID or the link. So can you help her with that?
Yes, I will go email that to her. I don't know if your screen will change while I'm doing email, but that's what I will do.
Well, you can take the agenda down and email her the link.
She has the email link here. Let me see.
Because while we're waiting on
That's
her,
Black Liberation Office. Okay. Do this.
Lucy, why don't you start your introduction? Tell people where you're from, because George is either gonna put a link to your bio or put your bio on the screen.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay. I want to say, let me just move this far from my table so I can. Hold on a second. Okay, that's better. So it's Nico. So sorry about that. So my name is Luis Kinshasa, and I'm from Congo. I was born in the Congo, and I reside in the UK. And the reason I ended up in the UK is because I grew up under a regime of President Mobutu, who was put in power by the United States, by the CIA, through a coup that assassinated Patrice Lumumba in the 60s. That's how my generation and the generation before me, 100,000 million people were forced to flee. I'm just one of them. And I just want to, first of all, thank the Black Liberation Caucus of the Women International League for inviting me to come to these events. And this important event, looking at the agenda.
Excuse me, Brother Lucy. Lucy, I believe there's noise coming from you. Could you mute yourself? Oh, thank you. Brother Lucy, hold on, because we want to make sure that Lucy, Sheila, and George introduce themselves before we start your 10 minutes. I thought that it would be great for people to hear. But what I want to ask you, because in the 90s, I became friends with Serge Mukindi, who was fighting Mobutu. Did you know Serge Mukindi?
I didn't know him personally, but I heard of him because I know he attended the first tribunal on reparations organized in the United States by the Uru movement of Chairman Amadi Shela. When I read that book on resolutions that were published after that event in 1982, I bought the book in Paris, and that's where I read his name, Serge Mukindi, member of the Front de Libération Nationale du Congo, but I never met him. but I knew of that organization, or almost heard about that organization. Yeah.
Well, he spent a lot of time in the United States, and I helped to organize quite a few fundraising efforts because he was on the front lines. And so he would go back to the front lines and fight, and then he'd have to retreat into Uganda, and I would send him money to Uganda. And then he would come back in the United States, and he spent some time in the United States working for a union, 1199. And then he just kind of disappeared. And I've been trying to find out if he's still alive. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in the Q&A. So for right now, Lucy, we're doing introductions, your name, your branch, and how the demonstrations are going for Tyree Nichols in DC. Could you tell us, please?
Okay. Actually, Lucy Murphy, the DC, Maryland, Virginia branch of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And actually, I had other things to do dealing with housing in DC yesterday. So we have a historic neighborhood in Washington, D.C. called Berry Farm, which has been all but destroyed. And we're trying to get the city to recognize the area and take some steps to ensure that people who have been moved out can move back.
Well, I did see on TV that there were lively demonstrations in DC, in New York, and actually in Atlanta as well. So did Sheila join us? Sheila, are you with us?
She's not. I sent the meeting link. I emailed it to her. I don't know another way to contact her besides email. If you have her phone number, Teresa, you could forward the meeting ID that I sent to you.
Well, let's go ahead and get started with your introduction, George, and then we'll hear from Brother Luesi. So we can start his 10 minutes after your introduction.
Hi, I'm George Friday from the Southern Piedmont branch, joined with my Stacy Friday and Raven Friday. Southern Piedmont branch. Yesterday in, not in Gastonia where I live, but in Charlotte, 20 miles away, in Marshall Park, about 200 people gathered, most African-American in the audience, and a lot of white people, older white people, not very many young people, for a press conference and a demonstration. Some people marched afterwards. And it was a very strong showing, but a reminder that in Charlotte, there's an ordinance against police overstepping and lots of consequences, including subpoena power, which was won some years back. And even with that, we were reminded that that doesn't keep people safe. You guys want anything? Hi, Stacey.
Yes, please let Raven and Stacy introduce themselves, please, quickly.
Hi, I'm Stacy Friday.
I'm Raven Friday.
Southern Piedmont branch. Southern Piedmont branch.
So it's a real family affair. So Luesi Kinshasa is our special speaker for today, and he'll have 10 minutes starting now. George, do you have a way to put his bio in the chat? George, are you there?
Yes, I'm going to put the bio here on the screen for a bit so you can check it out, and I will take it down and spotlight Brother Luisi when he starts to speak. But I'm going to scroll through this briefly. I don't have a way of putting it in the chat. It's too long. Oh, I have an idea. You start, Brother Luisi, and I will try to make this work.
Okay, thank you, sister. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you to the Black Liberation Caucus of the Women International League for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. And that is probably my first time to speak to your organization. And my name is Luis Kinshasa. I was born in the Congo, and I live in the United Kingdom, UK. And I'm basically an organizer of the, you might have heard of that in the United States already, the Rural Movement. And I'm one of the organizers in Europe. And the question of freedom is really fundamental to us, to me. Nothing is more important than freedom. There is nothing more important than that. And we're talking about the killing, the murder of Tyree and Nichols. It's quite clear from the very beginning that he was killed because he's not a free person. And the only reason he's not free because Black people, generally speaking, are not free. It doesn't matter if they're in the US or they're in Congo. That's why I'm not in Africa. Or if we're in the UK, we are not free. And that's really a fundamental question that everyone basically needs to deal with. When you're sick, you're going to see a doctor. They want to know what's going on. And the doctor will try to find out how long you've been suffering from this phenomenon or this illness so they can have a better understanding. And that is really the essence of the question. And not a long time ago, we were on the street in London. Most of the people on the planet went on the street in India, in Africa, of course, in the US, in Europe, to demonstrate, regarding the murder of George Floyd. But we knew after George Floyd being killed, that would not be the last African to be killed in the United States. We knew that. And we knew that not because, we read the Bible or the Quran, we can see the future, or we tell prophecies. We knew that because there is a relationship between Black people and the United States, just as there is a relationship between Black people in Africa and the United States. There is a relationship between Africa and Europe. There is a relationship. Africa and Black people do not have a relationship with people, if there are any people on the planet Jupiter or planet Mars. We don't have a relationship. So I'm not scared of anything coming from Jupiter or planet Mars. You can only deal with people you are in a relationship with. So the question is, what kind of a relationship do we have? This is the fundamental question. You see, because Germans, for example, and the United States, they have a relationship. French and the United States have a relationship. China also have a relationship. So are the Russians and so on. But the question is, what kind of relationship? And we say the relationship Africa has with the United States, the relationship Africa has with Europe, and by extension, the relationship Black people have with the United States. Because you go remember what I said about the doctor. The doctor want to try to find out how long you've been suffering from this phenomenon. When did it start? So the relationship Black people in the United States have with the US state didn't start in the United States. The relationship of Black people in Texas or New York, wherever, in the US did not start in the United States. It started in Africa. And that relationship is a colonial relationship. A colonial relationship, it doesn't matter whether it occurs, it is always an oppressive, an exploitative relationship. It's always a violent relationship. There is no such thing as peaceful, non-violent relationship with colonialism. It's just like there is no peaceful relationship between a zebra and the lion, because there is no vegetarian lions. I've never seen one. There is no leopard, which is vegetarian. It doesn't exist. It has to be a special leopard or lion, because the lion is a meat eater and it eats zebra. A colonizer basically mass oppress, mass exploit the colonized, must. It's not if, they have a choice, a possibility. No. A mosquito must suck blood. You don't ask a mosquito, are you a vegetarian? Are you Buddhist? Are you Catholic? It doesn't matter if a mosquito is a Buddhist or a Catholic, a Protestant, or whatever. A mosquito is a bloodsucker. That's just how things are in the world. So, which means that since the United States is a colonizing nation, that's why U.S. is always in wars with almost everybody, because they have to maintain their colonial domination over the rest of other people, other nations, other oppressed, other colonized people. That's why it's always the constant state of war. I'm from Congo, I said. The United States is in proxy war in the Congo as I'm talking to you. It's in a proxy war in the Congo. The United States doesn't do all these wars by itself. It has proxy people like mercenaries to do the war for them. So in the Congo, you have the Rwandan army, which is an extension of the United States colonial state. They have the Ugandan army. The Ugandan army is an extension of the United States power. So that's why you can't even talk about racism as being the problem. Colonialism is, because the police officers who killed Tyree Nichols, they were not white. They were black people. But why they kill another black person? Why? Because they work for colonialism. Their job is to enforce colonialism, and colonialism is always violence. That's what they have to do. They have to contain the black community. Who you think is containing black people in the Congo on the behalf of the United States and France and Belgium? Black police officers in the black army. Who is containing black people in Nigeria? Black state, black soldiers, black police people. So it's no racism between the black police officers in Nigeria and the black people in Nigeria. Just this year alone, January is not ended yet. 52 Africans, black people in Nigeria, in Jamaica, not too far from the United States, have been killed by the police. These are black police. Why? Because Jamaica is a colony of the United States, and black people in Jamaica are dominated by the United States colonialism. The only difference is they're not dominated inside the United States, but they are dominated outside the United States. But it's the same colonialism. Colonialism is a global system. It's not a system that's, you can find in the United States. It's a global system. It's the system. It's the starting point of everything. That's why I gave the example of the doctor. The starting point is colonialism. Everything comes from that. The creation of the United States, the creation of U.S. democracy, the creation of U.S. laws, the creation of American dream, the creation of French romance, everything comes from colonialism, which is an assault on Africa and other people on the planet. That's why Tyree Nichols was murdered, because of colonialism that has to oppress black people. That's the starting point. So if we are, and that's the position basically that the whole movement is putting out, the chairman of Mali City is putting out. That's why the FBI came down on the chairman of Mali on the 29th of July. I'm sure you heard about it, because chairman of Mali is promoting the reunification for black people, for Africa, as the starting point for us not only to fight back, but to reclaim our freedom. We lost our freedom as black people, as African people, and we're going to get it back as black people. And that's where we are now. That's why the FBI is touching him, because he's giving solutions, programs. For example, they come in for the proposal and black community control the police. If we can hire and fire the police officers, then we will not hire a police officer who is a murderer. This is one of the solutions. So I know my time is up and I have to be disciplined. And I just want to thank the Black Liberation Caucus for this opportunity to speak. And I look forward to the discussion. And, Uhuru.
Uhuru, we're very glad that you're here with us. What I had hoped that you would talk a little bit more about was your organizational affiliations. One of the important things that's going to happen in April that Lucy and I meet with a group of Pan-Africanists once a month to talk about the important Congress that's going to take place, the Pan-African Congress that's taking place, I believe, in Zimbabwe in April, and how that impacts African peoples worldwide in these last 2 years of the UN decade for people of African descent. So it's basically a two-part question. What is happening in Africa in the UN decade for people of African descent? We only have 2 years left. And then also, what do you know about the Pan-African Congress that's taking place in Zimbabwe in April of this year?
How much time for response?
Well, let's, if you could try to answer within 3 minutes, that would be great.
I'll try my best. First of all, I wasn't aware of the Congress, Pan-Africanist Congress in Zimbabwe. And if I can have information I can share with my organization, that would be fantastic. And secondly, we are an organization from its inception. We have been calling for one solution: the unification of African nation. We don't recognize the borders that exist in Africa, and that we don't recognize the nationalities given to us by the colonizers. And that's why we say we were Africans 500 years ago, and we are Africans today. That's the first thing. And second thing, we also claim to be the organization that carries out the legacy of Marcus Garvey. I'm sure you're all familiar with Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey is the first and the only one in history, in the recent history of Africa, that came with a unified solution that say that if you want to end the problems of Black people in the world, you have to build an organization that unify everybody so you can free Africa. And they say Africa for Africans, those are home and those abroad. That was his motto or his slogan. And we agree with him. You cannot have a separate solution for Black people. It will never work. It has never worked, and it will never work. And what needs to happen is that, one, Garvey was betrayed. That's why he couldn't carry out his mission. He was also attacked by the FBI. And we need to understand the significance of the state, colonial state, like the FBI, the ones killing Black people in the United States and killing Black people all over the world. The colonial state is a problem for us. FBI was born in the process of destroying the Garvey movement. And two, a sector of our African population didn't believe in Garvey's response. They went for a reform of colonialism, not to end colonialism, but reform it. That's Du Bois and others. That's why Garvey was, arrested by FBI and expelled from Jamaica. And then we had Kwame Nkrumah and others. Just to be short, those who call themselves Pan-Africanists, they believe that Africa can be united from above, from the African president. And what are we saying? It will never happen. It's not possible. It has to be unified from the forces from below, the masses of Black people around the planet. And this is our mission. This is why we're organizing a Congress in South Africa in 2024. And we're calling all Black people, the masses who want to see Africa to be free and united, so we don't have any more colonial solution. You got to remember all the solutions imposed on us everywhere we are colonial solution, basically reform of colonialism, reform. You just improve a little bit, but you maintain colonialism. Improve it a little bit for the few, you maintain it for the majority.
Brother,
that's the goal.
Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions, because you didn't answer my question about the African People's Socialist Party and the organization that you're a part of. But we do know the history of Marcus Garvey. We know that history. It's really United States colonial imperialist history. And we know what was done with the UNIA under Marcus Garvey. But if anybody else has any other questions, we'll let Brother Luesi try to answer your question. Well, hearing that no one else appears to have another question, I'm very much in support of the Huru movement and Chairman O'Malley. What happened in the United States when the FBI raided the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party, there's lots of solidarity happening around that. And I noticed in reading your bio, you make a direct link and connection to that movement and organization. So where do matters stand with that? You have 3 minutes.
I am a member of the African People's Socialist Party in the UK. And my job is to organize the African People's Socialist Party in Europe and in Africa. And we are winning, because we're organizing in France, we're organizing in Germany, in Africa, we're organizing in South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, West Africa, like Sierra Leone, all those places. That's why the FBI attacked Chairman O'Malley, because they know that he's winning. His vision, which is a continuity of Marcus Garvey, development of Malcolm X and others, is winning. The African, the young people in Africa, they're discovering Chairman O'Malley movement, and it's growing. That's what I can say. And he's making the call. We're making the call for Africans everywhere on the planet to unite and claim Africa and take control of our destiny. And that's what basically the essence of my work. Partly, I'm doing, on a daily basis here in England. And if you come to London, if you hear there is an event going on in London, or there's a demonstration outside your embassy, it's more likely to be us. If you go to Paris, I really need people to understand the significance of the leadership of Chairman O'Malley and the FBI attack on the Chairman O'Malley. They don't attack you just because you're black like that. They're attacking because his answer, his solution is working. He's working in the US and outside US as well. That's why I'm here.
Let me, Adrian.
Yes, Brother Luesi, I and everyone else on the call, I just wanted to let you know that yesterday on my radio, I spoke about the attack on the Black African, or rather the Solidarity Socialist group. I played an interview by Kim Iverson, and the way I framed it was that he was attacked because he spoke out against the proxy war that the U.S. is mounting against Russia, the proxy, and by which killing the people in that we're supplying weapons to.
Ukraine. Ukraine. Well, just to We thank you for coming, Brother Luesi. This is the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. There are 50 sections of WILF around the world, and approximately 20 sections are in Africa. So Africa is a continent where African women are standing up for peace and security against all of the proxy wars all over Africa and all of the so-called civil wars that are putting women and children at risk, including starving children. So I'm very interested in this. And the Pan-African group that I'm a part of, we meet monthly. So we'll be meeting in February. And I think Lucy and I will report on the fact that you came to speak with us today. And we do have another business agenda. So we do thank you for joining us. And we'll be in touch because I do have your email. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And it might allow just to respond to Adrian Bernard, less than a minute. He made a point.
If it's less than a minute,
less than a minute, less than a minute,
less than an hour for our agenda.
The explanation that the FBI attacked Chairman Amati because he opposed the war against Russia in Ukraine is true. He's opposed to that, but that's not really the reason. That's racism. That's basically they don't believe Africans can come to their own conclusions. They attack Chairman Amati is for the same reason they attack Malcolm X, for the same reason they attack Garvey, for the same reason they attack Patrice Lumumba. Not Turner, the same reason. Because
well, thank you. That's true. Brother Luesi, I came up in '65 in the civil rights movement, and we know how COINTELPRO worked then. And this is just a new expression of the FBI's so-called counterintelligence program against Black people. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uhuru. So George, could you put up the agenda, George, so that we can go to the next item on the agenda? So what we didn't do is we skipped over the BOPA review and the 3-year strategy chart to get Brother Luesi in. So George, if you could put up the BOPA, because I think we talked about adding something to the BOPA for this meeting. Well,
I read the BOPA?
Well, no, because under the areas of work, we do know that we make decisions by consensus, and there are decisions to be made here today. So representatives from the Atlanta branch, the Southern Piedmont branch, the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, and the Greater Philadelphia branch. So all of us will participate in the Cape Cod branch. So all of us will participate in the consensus when we get to that point on the agenda. But did we actually reach consensus last month on AFRICOM out of Africa?
We did. I listened to the recording again today.
Great. Well, the one proposal I want to add, which is a national crisis, actually a worldwide crisis, is affordable housing. So I'm proposing that we think about that because the Fannie Lou Hamer branch and the Southern Anti-Racism Network launched a very important AHA movement, which we're calling the Affordable Housing Alliance. And at our meeting on January 26th, we had 60 people to show up. It was a real knockdown, drag out kind of a meeting between the realtors and poor people. And when I said how many people want to join the Affordable Housing Alliance, all the Black people marched down front to join, and all the white realtors walked out of the room. It was a sight to behold. So out of the 60 people at the meeting, 20 of the Black people who were there marched down front and signed up with the Southern Anti-Racism Network on affordable housing. And what I've been learning in this process is that crisis of institutional investors and other speculators coming into communities, gentrifying them, buying up properties and raising the rents through the roofs. My apartment, I've been paying $705 for 5 years. The investors bought out the previous owner, and they're raising my rent to $1,064. And what I discovered in trying to find another place to live is all of the rents for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath are over $1,000. So I had to downsize to a 2-bedroom. So I'll be moving in March. But what I found is that most of the people who marched down to participate in the AHA movement, Affordable Housing Alliance, are people who were either homeless or evicted. They're living in extended stay Americas in different kind of places because they can't afford to sign a lease, or they can't get a lease because of their credit scores. So it is truly a crisis. 14% jump in homelessness this year over last year. The homeless children went up 7-fold. So I want us to ponder this question and try to reach consensus at next month's meeting. So George, if you could put it on there in red as an item to be considered at the February meeting. Affordable housing. And the other part of it is affordable housing, ending gentrification. So slash ending gentrification as one of our areas of work. Because I think in Atlanta, I watched it happen in Atlanta. It's certainly going on in DC. I watched it happen in Durham. So I know it's happening all over. So that's all I have on the BOPA. Any discussion or questions before we move to the chart? Lucy, if you could tell us again what you were telling us about that neighborhood in DC. Can't hear you, Lucy. You're muted. Lucy, can you tell us?
I didn't know I was going to have a speaking role.
Oh, well, no, Lucy, it's just what you said when you introduced yourself.
I mentioned that yesterday was, we have a film, a documentary about a neighborhood in a historic Black neighborhood in Washington, D.C. called Berry Farm. And that is, it was a neighborhood that Abraham Lincoln actually, the head of the Freedmen's Bureau, Colonel Howard, got the government, because they wouldn't sell property to Black people. They got the government to buy this white man's property and then divided it up to make lots for Black people to have houses and land in Washington, D.C. And later on, that same area was turned into public housing. And it's been public housing for most of my lifetime. But with this privatization of public housing, and it's been destroyed. But there was an earlier agreement that everyone who was moved out would be moved back. And of course, we know that this is a lie that's been told all over the country. Very seldom do the people get to move back. But we're mounting.
Okay, Lucy. Well, I just kind of wanted you to say what the issue is. So the
issue is dislocation.
Exactly. And so that's a part of this, what I call urban displacement that's taking place, because all of the housing authorities around the country have become real estate investment companies. That's what's happening in Columbus. So HUD has allowed housing authorities to do something called RAD, Residential Assistance Demonstration Project. And that means that the housing authority can get investors to renovate aging housing projects, and then they raise the rent to market value. And so that's another part of this affordable housing ending gentrification subject that I want us to consider taking up, because it's disproportionately affecting Black people. So if there's nothing else on the BOPA, we can move to the strategy chart. Thank you, Lucy. So on the strategy chart, George, you want us to do a quick review only for the period we're in, which started in the period we're in started in July of 2022, and it's going to take us until August of 2023. And as you can see, George, if you could read our goals again for this basically 1 year period, it's actually taking us to June of 2023, which the next 6 months, this is what we're supposed to be accomplishing. George, what are the goals?
150 new members from 5 regions: Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, Northwest, Midwest. Reparation ordinances in 10 branch cities. 10 branches participate in anti-racism transformation, which is taking the form of beginning BLC EDAC dialogue series. That's an 18-month process, so it goes to June of 2024. There we go.
Okay, well, that's great. Now, in terms of our strategic objectives during this period, would you read those?
Our strategic objectives. This started in July of 2022. Attend International Wealth Congress in July and present equity and inclusion workshop. That has been accomplished. The EDAC established in July of 2022. In the Northeast, we have 2 representatives, Robin Lloyd and Susan Smith. The Southeast, Samantha Turner. The Southwest, Gloria McMillan. The Northeast, Sue Hilton. There's not a representative from the Midwest. The other strategic objective we have here is BLC and EDAC members run for and win open board seats.
Yeah, and by the way, you said Northeast twice. So in the Northwest sector, we have Sue Hilton. She's in Humboldt, California. And of course, in the Northeast, we have Robin Lloyd and Susan Smith. In the Southeast, we have Samantha Turner. And so that gets us to our next important item of consolidating the strategy team for the BLC. So far, we've had Shante McLaughlin, we've asked Lucy Murphy, George Friday, and Sheila Harper, and Daryl Moak. Daryl is not with us, but I would like for us to expand the strategy team to 7 people. There are approximately 5 to 7 people participating with EDAC. There's a couple of new people, George, that joined EDAC because when we had our meeting, I think there were about 7 people of European descent when we did the joint meeting. And we want to have at least an equal number of BLC members representing different branches. So we have Greater Philadelphia, if Sheila is still willing to serve. We have the DMV branch, counting on Lucy and possibly Daryl. He seems a bit busy these days, but we need 2 persons of color from each of the branches. And we have Shante here with us today, and we also have Adrian, and we would like it if he would consider being on the strategy team. And this will become important because when we get to the BLC EDAC dialogue agreements, which is a 20-minute discussion that we need to have to reach consensus on today, that's on the agenda. So Donna, we want to make sure that there's at least 1 person from the different branches. And the point of the strategy team is to build basically the 18-month dialogue, which will include a listserv and moderators for the listserv. And right now, we're in the process of trying to choose a name for the listserv. And so the president of WILF has said we could not use WILF in the name for the listserv. So the listserv, because we are independent caucuses inside of WILF, the listserv has to have a name that does not include the word WILF. However, as WILF members, the discussion on the listserv, which would be open to any WILF member to join the listserv, the discussion is going to be about the anti-racism transformation of WILF in the US section, with a plan of presenting our findings at the triannual Congress of the US section of WILF, which will take place likely in August of 2024. So this is all a part of our strategic planning process. So for the next slightly less than or about 18 months, we'll be in discussion about the anti-racism transformation of WILF US with a plan to make some decisions at the triannual meeting in August. So that's the ask that we're making now under this agenda item for expanding the strategy team of the BLC. So I put Adrian and Donna on the spot as two people who are not on the team at present. So right now we have George, Teresa, Lucy, Sheila, and possibly Adrian. Possibly Darryl. We'll have to check back with him, but he has said that he was committed. So if we could get two more people. So Adrian, you're raising your hand.
Yes, I go. I agree.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what about you, Sister Donna? I know you busy, but we need you, and we need your calm, sweet nature to be a part of this.
I'm worried that I'm too busy, but my heart is there. So I'm very willing. I'm trying to keep things going here on the Cape too. We have a big program that we're trying to put together for March 10th. So but I'm with you. I'm with y'all.
Yeah. Well, thank you, George. You have your hand up.
Yes. Isn't Shantae on the strategy team?
Yeah. So Shantae, George, Teresa, Lucy, Sheila, maybe Darryl, and Donna and Adrian. Did I forget to say Shantae?
You did earlier. I thought maybe I had it wrong, but will you say that again so I can count the number? I know you want 7.
Well, we want to get to that. So Shantae, Sheila, George, Teresa, Lucy, Donna, Adrian, and Darryl has been kind of out there, but he's missed a number of the meetings, so we can check back in with him. But counting all of those I just named, we do have 7.
We do have 7. Darryl would make 8,
Right.
unless I counted wrong.
Exactly. So we'll check with him, but I know he's very busy, and he says that his Sundays are precious and he can't meet on Sundays or something to that effect. But George, since you're on the executive committee for the Green Party Black Caucus with Darryl, could you check with him to see where matters stand?
Yes, I will.
Well, we want to reach consensus, and so we're asking you, Deidre. I know you have the children today. It's your Sunday grandmother day, but are you okay with the configuration we lined up?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, that's my comrade, co-person. She and I serve on the strategy team. I serve on the BLC steering committee together. So you put yourself on camera, Shantae. You look like you're cold with your what you got on, a little hoodie? What's that you got on? Homeless lives matter. Oh,
Right.
I'm counting on you to be a part of the affordable housing drive we got going, because Georgia is in the legislative session now, Shantae, and they're taking up the issue of housing and homelessness. So I will talk to you more about it, because I will be in Atlanta on Lobby Day on February 8th. So I'll come up on the 7th. So maybe we can have dinner together on the 7th. Sorry for that momentary detour, everybody. But we look like we're all set on the strategy team question. So George, the next item on the agenda is for us to agree on the BLC EDAC process.
Yes.
And we allotted 20 minutes for that. So how are we doing on time, George?
It's a little tight. We have 23 minutes left.
Well, let's try to do this in 15 minutes.
Okay.
I'll give an overview. We agreed in our last joint meeting with the European Descent Allies Caucus that we would set up a listserv, and the listserv would be on Rise Up. Well, Sue Hilton in the Northwest sector of EDAC, she set up the listserv, and I think the problem was that it had Wolf in the name. And so Darian said that wouldn't work. So we stopped that listserv. So we have basically two decisions to make this afternoon of proposals for the name of the listserv. I propose women_peace_freedom at riseup.net, because it says that we are the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom without saying the whole name. And it also says that we're for peace and we're for freedom. And we know you can't have peace without freedom. And so that was the name I proposed. So the EDAC team is waiting to hear what our proposal is. My guess is that they will probably embrace it if we agree, but we have to reach consensus on a name. So the floor is open for alternatives to the women_peace_freedom. Alternative suggestions, please. Who's talking?
I thought it was Sheila, but she's muted.
Sheila, were you trying to talk?
Yes, I was. I was trying to say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was trying to say, I agree with the name that you chose. I like that name. It's Women, Peace, and Freedom. Again, what was?
Well, the way it will appear to give us complete control of it, it will be women_peace_freedom at riseup.net. So when the new group is set up on Rise Up, and I should add this part, that people chose Rise Up because everybody's tired of Google trying to take over the world. So several people complain about it not being a Google group, because Google does mine your stuff and sell your stuff. So people wanted to stay away from Google, and most of the groups that I've dealt with in the past, mostly socialist and left groups, they tend to use Rise Up. Rise Up is free, but they don't mine your stuff and sell your stuff.
I like it. I like that name.
I just wrote what you said, Teresa, and put it in the chat.
Okay.
And it's fine with me.
Well, it sounds great.
I like it too.
Women_peace_freedom at riseup.net. And so that's what we will tell the EDAC group. Now, the next step, strategy team, is that we have to meet for another joint meeting in February with EDAC so that we can finalize everything. And so I thought that before we leave this item, we can look at the earliest possible dates in February that we can meet based on our schedules. So everybody kind of pull out their calendar for February. So February is going to be here at the end of this week. Can you believe it?
No.
Well, actually, it's going to be Wednesday. It's the first day of February.
Yeah.
So I'm okay on February 2nd, and I'm okay on February 6th or February 5th. Lucy, didn't you say you were going to New York or somewhere?
Yes, I will be in Kansas City from the 1st to the 5th of February and in New York from the 10th through the 12th of February. So anytime after February 14th or February 14th on out, I'm good.
Well, could you make yourself available on the 6th of February? That's a Monday.
That's a rehearsal day.
Oh,
Monday's a rehearsal day. Monday is Daryl Moak. I'm in Daryl Moak's chorus in Baltimore, and they rehearse on Monday. And because we're performing in New York, my chorus in DC is rehearsing the next 2 Mondays.
well, um, we have the UN Decade meeting, which is an evening meeting on the 16th. And you said you're flexible after the 14th, right?
That's right. Yes.
Well, I am totally open on the 22nd and the 23rd. So are those dates workable for all of the 7 of us?
What time of day are you talking? Are you
Well,
talking 7 in the evening?
Well, it would have to be in the evening because I found out that you're tied up until about 5:30, right, Sheila?
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
So we'll tell the EDAC people anytime after 5:30. And so I think 6 would be a good time for me because I'm never out after dark, and it starts to try to get dark around 6ish. So if we could say 6 o'clock on the 27th or the 23rd, so if people could keep both those dates open till we find out what works best for EDAC.
The 23rd works for me. This is Shantae. The 22nd, I have class that evening.
So the 23rd is our preferred date.
Yes, ma'am.
So are we all?
No,
What,
the 23rd. The 23rd works for me, but not the 27th. Well, no, at 6 p.m. Yes.
At 6 p.m. you could do either.
Yes.
So we're gonna try to steer towards the 23rd because that's the only day Shantae can do it. But if for some reason we are locked into the 22nd, Shantae, we'll have to give you a report back, but we will offer those 2 dates with our preference being the 23rd. And what we will be doing in the joint meeting with EDAC, we will be deciding on who the first group of moderators are, because the one complaint about the membership listserv that was shut down by the national board is they could never get any moderators. Well, this will be a moderated list. And based on the strategy that we've outlined for people to learn from each other, George is going to be kind of the main point person for this. So the proposal that I would like to make to EDAC, that we have a discussion topic per week. So the EDAC will agree on a list of topics, weekly topics. One of the topics is, why does, I'm just throwing something out, but when we meet with them, we'll all be throwing something out. One of the topics is, why, based on the book, There Can Be No Peace Without Freedom from Dr. Joyce Blackwell, which all of the EDAC people are studying, why is it that in its 100+ year history has WILF been known for excluding working class women of color, in particularly the case of Fannie Lou Hamer, because she was a sharecropper and didn't have a college degree? I want to hear how people talk about that, because it's documented in a book that all of the EDAC people are reading. I have the book. The book costs about $75 now, so it's hard to find, but I've had the book for many years, and I'm going to try to see if the publishing company will sell us the book, but it's really out of print. So the publishing company is the Southern Illinois University or something, because it was her dissertation, Joyce Blackwell. It was her dissertation, the book, and she lives in Raleigh. But if you try to reach her about anything associated with Will, she's told her publishers and agents and everybody she doesn't want to talk about it. So she's still alive and she's still in Raleigh and she still writes books, but she don't want to talk about her Will dissertation. So we can't reach Joyce Blackwell. For those of us who have the book, we're glad we got it because it's hard to find. George, what do you got, George?
A couple of things. I don't want to take a lot of time because we're down to about 12 minutes, but and this I think is a better conversation to have with the EDAC about the questions of the week or whatnot.
Okay.
Part of my recommendation is that there may be a question put out there, but for us to talk about how much time that question is live before we get another question. And then that maybe some period, I don't know how long, we can talk about it together, but after the question goes out, then we share the intention of the question. For instance, the question I think is important is, when did you first notice difference in your community of origin? What kind of difference did you notice? What was the message from your community of origin about that difference? And that is worth everyone thinking about, but the intention behind that isn't to get us a back and forth about what you know and what I know and what people don't know, but what did you learn and at what age about what difference means and the value of people? It's just a basic starter. Okay, that took me 90 seconds.
Well, George, let me say this because I've been in your workshops. And the unique thing about what we're doing here is that we are laser focused on the transformation of WILF as an organization, not about how you feel as a white person. We're talking about an organizational culture that has systematically excluded Black, Indigenous women of color. So we want to cut to the chase. So we've been dilly-dallying around for over a year and not approaching this. So we are way past the point of talking about how do you feel? No, how did you, after 50 years of being a member of this organization, never raise the question of the inclusion of Black, Indigenous women of color in the leadership? No, we really want to cut to it because we want the discussion at the end of the week, which is what I'm proposing, because I think anything longer than a week might degenerate into a brawl. But if we have a week where people have 7 days to put out their comments in the discussion, and they're not all over the map. See, the question, if you don't mind me speaking so frankly, that you raised is much too broad for what our strategic objective is. And that's the anti-racism transformation of this specific organization, which is now in its 108th year. So in 2025, we will celebrate a 110-year anniversary. And we want to be somewhere by then. We want to have the full national board staffed, and we want it staffed with women of color. Right now, there are 2 people of color on the national board. That's you when you get installed on Tuesday, and Philip Cole. That's it. There are 5 open board seats on the national board that, based on all of us who will have 2 years in, I have more than enough years in. I will be running for the national board this fall. And any other member who has a total of 24 months in can run for office on the national board. And this is a very wealthy organization. We'll hear how wealthy on Tuesday, because I set up a fundraising drive. So I gave $100 and I challenged 500 other members to do $100. My guess is that they raised $50,000 in 2022 easily. And it's already close to $500,000 rich. So I agree with you, George, that this is a deeper discussion for the strategy team to have with EDAC on the 22nd or the 23rd when we meet. So that's all we have for this agenda. It's all I have for this agenda item. We have our strategy team, and we're going to meet on the 22nd or the 23rd. So I think we should now do announcements, because we have a very important meeting coming up tomorrow for the Advancing Human Rights Committee. So you want to make that announcement, Donna?
Yes. Yes, we're meeting tomorrow night, 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And really looking forward to everyone joining in on that. We need to know what everyone's doing in their subcommittees. And I just had just one little announcement that here on Cape Cod, we have a terrible homeless problem. But the Wampanoag tribe received money from the federal government and was able to buy a motel, and they're working on fixing it up with their hammers and their nails, and they're going to be housing 100 of their homeless tribe members. And
wow.
it's a wonderful thing going on in Mashpee, Massachusetts for the Wampanoag tribe. So I hope we can get lots more federal money going down to come and help our homeless problems, because it's horrible here. Many families who have lived here for generations, their children are leaving. There's no way for a first-year teacher to afford rent here. So let alone a policeman or a fireman. And right. It's a terrible problem.
I put the link in the chat. Sorry, I'm sorry for interrupting, Teresa. But
no,
there's a link in the chat for the AHR meeting tomorrow. And there's a password for it. And because I couldn't put a space between that link and the email for Tuesday's board meeting, you send an email to secretary@wilfus.org and say, send me the information for the board meeting. That's it. Sorry they got copied together.
Well, that's 2 announcements. So I've already sent my email to secretary@wilfus.org. So I will be in the board meeting. And I did tell the president and the secretary that my 2 big items are the nominations committee, which has to be in place in order to run the elections this fall. And right now, for the first time that I've ever known in all the years I've been a part of WILF, there is no nominations committee. It is a standing committee. And the chair of that committee is a member of the national board. So that's a seat that somebody will need to run for this fall. Because in the interim, I hope to ask some of the EDAC members to be on the nominations committee. And so we will definitely be there. I will tomorrow night, Donna, with my report on the UN decade and the ending mass incarceration. So I will be there tomorrow night.
That'll be wonderful.
So are there any other announcements before we decide who is going to facilitate or co-facilitate the meeting in February? Because our February BLC meeting is the 26th of February. I believe that's the last Sunday in, am I right, George? The last Sunday in February.
Yes.
Okay, George
Yes.
and I worked together on this meeting, and I think we may have worked together on last month's meeting as well, December. So we do need one or two other people who are not from Southern Piedmont, who are not from Fannie Lou Hamer, to facilitate the February meeting. So do we have any takers from Metro Atlanta, DMV, Greater Philadelphia? Shantae, you're saying yes?
I'm saying yes. What's the date
Wonderful.
again? So I can put it in my planner.
Yeah, February 26th, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. Yes, I'll facilitate it. And I'll get with George between now and then to make sure that I have everything in place.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Before we leave, another congratulations to George Friday. She's our BLC member who is joining the national board. So please send that message to secretary@wilfus.org and try to attend the board meeting on Tuesday, January 31st, which starts at 8 p.m. Because we want to be there when George is officially installed as the board member for the program committee chair for the next 3 years. So we will have our esteemed George Friday on the National Board of WILF for the next 3 years. So that's all I have. So are we ready to adjourn and try to get some dinner?
All right, everybody. See you tomorrow night.
Oh, George, save everything, okay?
Oh, yeah, always.
I love you.
Bye. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Love y'all. Congratulations, George. We're proud
Yeah.
of you.
Thank you, sweetie.